The wind was cold that night, sharper than usual. Blowing through the trees of the deep forest, Eli stood outside his small outpost, trying to fix a broken solar tower. The tools in his hands were heavy, his fingers numb, but he kept working. He was alone on this alien planet, sent here to monitor weather changes and keep an eye on local energy patterns. Most days were boring but peaceful until tonight. As he adjusted a panel, he heard something strange, a soft crunch of leaves. Behind him, he paused, holding his breath. He turned, expecting a wild animal. Maybe one of those four-legged lizard things that howled at night. But what he saw was not a beast. A figure moved between the trees. Fast, quiet, like a shadow, small and thin. About the height of a child, but clearly not human. The moonlight hit her armor, cracked, dirty, and stained with something dark. She wore a cloak, half torn, and a curved blade at her side. Then she stumbled and fell to her knees, gasping, her breathing rough. Eli took a step back. Raising his light rifle, unsure what to do, the figure looked up at him with glowing silver eyes. And for a moment, they both froze. Then she spoke in broken English, voice dry like sand. "Please, I beg, help me. Need your strength." Eli didn't move, confused and cautious. This was a Yarakan, one of the alien warrior races known across the galaxy. They hated humans, didn't they? Why was she here, begging like this? Before he could ask anything, a loud growl echoed through the trees. Something big was chasing her. The ground shook with heavy steps coming fast. Without thinking, Eli grabbed her arm, pulled her up, and rushed back to his outpost. The door hissed open, and he pulled her inside. Just in time, a massive thud hit the door behind them, shaking the walls. Something roared outside, clawing at the metal, then stopped. Eli locked the blast door and backed away. His heart pounding, the alien girl sat on the floor, bleeding, her cloak soaked, her breathing shallow, still. She looked at him like he was her only hope. He pointed the light rifle at her, trying to stay calm. "Who are you? Why are you here?" She touched her chest. "Cariel. Scout. Hunted? Hunted? By who?" She winced. "My kind. I broke the code. I spared a child. They call me weak." Eli lowered the gun slowly. This warrior girl, barely alive, had run from her own people to find a human. Something didn't make sense, but the fear in her eyes was real. Her hands were shaking. Not from cold, but from exhaustion and pain. She wasn't a threat, not now. He helped her sit on a small cot and gave her water. She drank slowly, then looked around. The small room, metal walls, wires, screens, tools, a human, alone. "Still strong," she whispered. Eli laughed softly. "Strong? I'm just a mechanic." She shook her head. Not strength of muscle. Strength of choice that made him pause. What did she mean by that? Outside, the forest was silent again, but Eli knew that whatever chased her might return. He scanned the monitor. No movement for now. Inside, Cariel leaned back, her face calm but her body still tense. He handed her a clean cloth and a small healing patch. She looked at it, surprised. "You help me? Even when I'm not one." "Of you," Eli shrugged. "You asked, and maybe that's all it took." A voice asking for help. Not screaming, not demanding, just asking. As she treated her wounds, Eli sat on a crate and watched her. She moved with precision. Despite pain, she was trained, smart, deadly, but something in her had broken. Not her body, but her spirit. Maybe that's why she came to him. Maybe she saw something in humans others didn't. Or maybe she had no choice still. Eli couldn't stop thinking about those glowing eyes when she said, "Your strength." Why would an alien warrior cross dangerous lands just to find a human like him? What did she really want? And what if her enemies came back stronger? He didn't have answers yet, but one thing was clear at night. everything had changed. The forest, once quiet, now felt like a trap, and in his outpost, he had a guess that could either bring to Thor something far more powerful. Hope. Outside, the wind howled again. Inside, two strangers sat quietly. One human, one alien. Both wondering what would happen when morning came. Kiriel didn't sleep that night. Even though her body was weak, her mind stayed sharp. She sat near the heater in the corner of the human's small outpost. Wrapping herself in an old gray blanket, her silver eyes scanned every corner. Every noise, every flicker on the wall. She had trained her whole life to survive. And now she was depending on a stranger. Eli sat at his desk, half watching her, half reading a field manual he didn't need. He wasn't used to visitors, especially not tiny alien warriors with curved blades and deadly calm. He wanted to ask her more questions, but didn't want to push her too fast. Still, something inside him told him she hadn't come here just to hide. She needed something else, something deeper in the early hours. He brought her a metal bowl. With warm protein soup, she sniffed it suspiciously and took a small sip. Her face twisted. Bitter? He smiled. It's better than nothing. She took another sip, slowly. Like every taste was a battle. Then she looked up at him and said, "You think I am weak?" Eli shook his head. "No, I think you're strong, but..." Confused, Kiriel nodded, setting the bowl down. She pulled her blade from her belt and placed it gently on the table. It was cracked, burned near the hilt, and covered in dried blood. "This blade was made for war," she said quietly. "But I used it to protect a child." Eli leaned forward. "Tell me." Kiriel's voice was calm, but her eyes were stormy. "In my tribe, Yerakin females must prove strength by taking life. When I found a young prisoner crying in the mud, I could not strike him. He was scared, broken, like I once was. So I broke the law. I set him free." She paused. "For that, they called me weak, dishonored, hunted." Eli stared at her, speechless. He knew her kind were known across the galaxy for being fierce and brutal. But he never imagined one would risk her life to show mercy. Especially not for a species they once called softbloods. Kiriel watched him carefully. "You wonder why I came to you?" "I've read about humans," she said. "Your people survive not just with weapons, but with heart." Eli smiled. "Heart doesn't stop bullets." "No," she replied, "but it saves people." Eli stood and walked over to the small window, looking out into the dark forest. "So, what now? You stay here forever?" Kiriel shook her head. "They will find me again. Then why come here?" he asked, turning to face her. "What did you expect me to do?" Kiriel stood slowly, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. "I need your help, human," she said softly. "I need your strength." He sighed, confused. "I'm not a soldier. I'm not a fighter. You are something else," she whispered. "You protect without fear. I watched you. Weeks before I came, you lived alone, fought off wild beasts, shared food with lost travelers. That is the kind of strength my people never taught me." Eli didn't know what to say. A tiny alien girl had been watching him, learning from him, even admiring him, and now she was standing in his outpost, trusting him more than anyone from her own world. He nodded slowly. "All right, if you want help, I'll give it." Kiriel tilted her head, curious, "Even if it brings danger?" "I'm already in danger just talking to you," he smirked. "But I won't let you face it alone." A small smile touched her lips, just for a second, then faded. "I will learn the human way," she said, "not just to survive, but to change something." Eli reached for a datapad and placed it on the table. "Then let's start with something simple, how to make better soup." Kiriel blinked. "Is that human training?" Eli laughed. "Step 1 of eat anything that tastes like mud." As they both chuckled softly, something shifted in the air. No longer just hunter and stranger. No longer prey and protector. They had become something else. Allies. Two beings from different worlds. Bound by a moment of choice, outside, the sun began to rise, casting soft light through the leaves, but deep in the trees. Other eyes were watching. Hunters were already tracking the trail. The girl may have found a friend, but the danger was far from over. The forest was silent, too silent. Kirill stood at the edge of the outpost wall, staring at the trees. Her silver eyes didn't blink, her small fingers resting on the hilt of her cracked blade. Eli stepped beside her, holding a motion scanner. No animals, no wind, no birds, he said quietly. That's not normal. Kirill nodded, her voice low. They're here. Who? Eli asked, already knowing the answer. My people, she whispered. Hunters, maybe two. Maybe more. Eli felt the chill run down his back. He wasn't a soldier, but even he knew what that meant. They had to prepare, or they'd both be dead by morning. We're not going to run. He asked. Kirill turned to him, firm and calm. No, we fight for the rest of the day. They worked together. Eli gathered old mining tools, wires, and spare parts. Kirill set traps like a ghost silent tripwires, spike pits, flash. Grenades hidden in dirt. They turned the outpost into a cage, one made not to protect, but to confuse and delay. Inside, Kirill sharpened her blade using a flat stone. Eli watched her from across the room. She moved with a quiet rhythm, graceful but tired. How many hunters will come? He asked. 2, maybe 3. She replied, but even one is dangerous. They kill with joy. And they do not fail. Eli checked his old light rifle, charged it, and strapped a knife to his belt. He wasn't trained, but he had tools, traps, and a reason to fight. He wouldn't let them take her. Not after everything she had survived. Not after the way she had looked at him with trust. As night fell, the forest stayed quiet. Too quiet. Then came the sound. A low hiss, like steam leaking from the trees. A red light flickered through the dark, hovering between the branches. Kirill's face turned pale. The beacon? What beacon? Eli asked, eyes wide. Death call, she whispered. It means I am here. And that the hunt begins? Suddenly. The trap near the eastern wall snapped. Something had stepped in. Eli and Kirill moved fast, taking position, lights off. Hearts pounding. Through the window, they saw it. A tall figure, armored in black and green, helmet glowing with 2 red eyes. It moved slowly, careful, its sharp claws shining in the moonlight. Behind it, another figure, thinner, faster. Holding a long spear that pulsed with blue energy, they sent twin hunters. Kirill said, brothers trained to kill together, Eli whispered. And we're supposed to fight that? Kirill didn't smile, but she nodded once. Yes. The first hunter stepped on a hidden pressure pad. Boom. A flash grenade exploded in his face, making him stagger. The second one jumped back, hissing, but tripped a wire and fell in 2. A pit, screaming, echoed as energy sparks lit the trap. But they were not dead. Not yet. Eli took a deep breath and aimed his light rifle. The first hunter was crawling toward the door, blind but angry. Kirill ran outside, jumping over traps. Like she had memorized every step, she met the hunter with a shout. Blade flashing in the moonlight, he roared and swung. But she ducked and cut across his leg. Eli watched in shock. She was so small, so fast, like lightning made flash. The second hunter climbed out of the pit, limping, eyes burning with rage. He saw Eli standing alone by the door and charged. Eli aimed and fired once, twice, 3 times. The blasts hit armor, not flesh, but it slowed him. Then Kirill appeared behind the hunter. Leaping high, she landed on his back, blade sinking deep. He howled and spun, but she held on like a shadow. With one final strike, she took him down. The fight ended with heavy breaths and silence. Two bodies lay on the ground, one still twitching. One already gone, Cariel walked back to Eli, breathing hard, covered in dirt and blood. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "You fight like a builder," Eli grinned. "That's because I am one." She looked at the forest, still quiet. "They will send more," she said. "Then we get ready," he replied. "But why are they so desperate to kill you?" he asked. Cariel's eyes narrowed. "Because I am the first to say no?" Eli stared at her. Realizing this fight wasn't just about her life, was about something bigger, a challenge to an old belief, a tribe ruled by fear, and now he was part of that challenge. The night passed slowly, the air thick with tension. But something had changed. Cariel was not just a hunted girl anymore. She was a fighter with a purpose. And Eli was no longer just a lonely human on a forgotten planet. He had become her ally, her shield, and maybe her friend. The morning sun peeked through the trees, soft and golden. Eli sat on a wooden crate just outside his outpost, holding a metal cup of warm coffee. His arm was bandaged, bruised from the fight the night before, but his eyes were focused on something far more surprising. Cariel, the tiny alien huntress, stood in the open clearing, her blade drawn, her armor patched with strips of human cloth. But she wasn't fighting enemies. Now she was training like a human. She moved slowly, repeating the steps Eli had shown her earlier. Not just wild swings or fast strikes like her kind, but calm footwork, balanced moves. Eli watched quietly, amazed by her focus, her hunger to learn. She had asked for his strength, and now she was trying to earn it. When she finished her routine, she looked at him, panting. "That was wrong," she said, frowning. "You turned your back after the last step." Eli replied, "You'd be dead." Cariel dropped her blade with a sigh. "Why is human style so slow?" "Because we don't fight to kill," he said. "We fight to protect." Cariel tilted her head. "Strange idea." "But I want it," she whispered. "That kind of strength." Eli stood up, groaning from sore muscles. "Then we start from the beginning," he said, tossing her a small metal rod. She caught it with one hand, confused. "What is this?" "A training baton," he smiled. "No sharp edges, no killing, just skill. For the next few hours." They practiced. Eli showed her how to dodge, how to use her small size as an advantage. He taught her how to trap enemies without ending their lives, how to observe before acting, how to wait before striking. Cariel listened, failed, tried again. She had never trained like this slow, patient, thoughtful, and it frustrated her. "Back home," she said, after falling for the third time, "we'd laugh at slowness, and look where that got you," Eli replied, offering a hand to pull her up. She looked at his face, then slowly took his hand. Maybe slow wasn't weakness after all. During breaks, they sat by the small campfire. Eli handed her a piece of dried fruit. She sniffed it, licked it, and winced. "Tastes like death," he laughed. "Then you'll love dinner." For the first time, Cariel laughed too. It was short, soft, and unexpected, but real. That night, they sat inside, repairing a broken motion scanner together. Cariel's hands were smaller, but quick and smart. Eli gave her tools, and she followed his instructions without complaint. "I was never taught to build," she said, adjusting a wire. "My people destroy. We burn. We take." "That's not strength," Eli said. "That's fear pretending to be power." She looked up at him, silent. Then she nodded once. "Teach me more," and he did. Over the next 3 days, Cariel trained harder than Eli had ever seen. She ran laps around the outpost, practiced with batons and wires. She set traps without killing intent and started understanding human logic. Eli saw her change, not just in how she moved, but in how she thought. Less like a hunted animal, more like a leader. One morning, she woke Eli before sunrise. "Get up," she said. "Time for your training," he groaned. "I don't need training. You're slow." She smirked and laughed. He laughed and followed her outside. She made him run, crawl, balance on logs, even fight with padded sticks by midday. He collapsed in the grass, sweating. "You call this revenge?" he asked. "No," she said, tossing him water. "This is the human way." "Yes." He smiled. "Maybe I created a monster, a strong one," she said proudly, later. As they sat watching the forest, Carielle's face grew serious. "My sister will come soon," she said. "She leads the red hunt. They follow the beacon." Eli's heart sank. "Can we stop them?" Carielle didn't answer right away. "She is faster than me, stronger too. But she fights with pride. I will fight with reason." Eli nodded slowly. "Then we prepare." But he knew this next battle would be different. Not just a fight for survival, but for Carielle's soul to prove that mercy was not weakness. That humans weren't fragile. That strength wasn't in how many enemies you killed, but in how many lives you saved. And as the wind blew through the forest, carrying the scent of smoke, they both knew war was coming again. But this time, they were ready, together. The sky turned orange as the sun sank behind the trees. Eli stood near the outpost wall, holding his rifle, scanning the forest again and again. His hands were steady, but his chest felt tight. He had survived wild animals, alien traps, and even twin hunters. But tonight was different. Carielle stood beside him, silent and still, her blade resting on her back. She wore a simple chestplate now, made from scraps of human metal and her old armor. It wasn't just protection, it was a message, a symbol of what? She had become half warrior, half something new. "They will come at sunset," Carielle said softly. "She always attacks at sunset." "Your sister?" Eli asked. Carielle nodded. "Valen leads the red hunt. The most feared warriors of my tribe. She trained me. Loved me," she added. "Then hunted me." Eli wanted to say something, to comfort her, but he didn't know how. Instead, he handed her a small stone, flat and warm. It had the symbol of peace drawn on it, something from Earth. Carielle looked at it for a long time, then slipped it into her belt pouch. "I will not kill her," she whispered. Eli blinked, surprised. "Even if she tries to kill you?" "I must show her there is another way," Carielle said, "even if it costs me everything." As the last rays of sunlight touched the treetops, a horn sounded deep and cold. It came from the east. Echoing across the forest, Carielle's body tensed. "They're here." From the shadows they came. For warriors in red and black armor, their weapons glowing faintly. And at the front stood Valen, taller than Carielle, stronger, with golden armor and fierce, burning eyes. She stopped just 10 feet from the outpost, raising her hand. "Carielle," she said, her voice sharp like a blade, "you have been found. Come back now, and die with honor." Carielle stepped forward alone, her voice steady. "No. You betrayed the code," Valen snapped. "You chose weakness." "I chose mercy," Carielle answered, "and I will not kill to prove my worth." Eli stood behind the wall, watching everything through a narrow crack. His hand was on the rifle trigger, but Carielle had told him, "Do not interfere." This was her fight, not his, and yet every part of him wanted to run out there and help her. Valen raised her blade, stepping closer. "If you will not kill, then I will end your shame myself." She lunged forward, and the battle began. Carielle moved like wind and shadow. She dodged her sister's strikes, blocked heavy blows. Never attacking first, Valen fought with rage, screaming with each strike, "You were my blood." Carol stayed silent, her eyes full of pain, not hate. The other hunters watched, unsure if they should join. This was not a battle of power. It was a test of belief. And Carol was fighting for something deeper than victory. But Valen was too strong. One strike sent Carol flying into a tree, gasping for breath. Her blade falling from her hand, she looked up, dizzy, her vision blurred. Velen raised her weapon for the final strike. Then Eli was there. He stepped between them, arms wide. "No," he shouted. Valen's blade sliced across his chest, not deep, but enough to make him fall. Carol screamed, something breaking inside her. She rushed to Eli's side, holding him, her hands shaking. His blood ran onto the grass, warm and red. "You weren't supposed to interfere," she whispered. Eli coughed. "I'm not good at following orders." Carol stood slowly, her eyes shining not with fear, but with something older, something human. She picked up her blade and faced her sister once more. But this time, her stance was different. Not angry, not afraid. Calm, balanced human, Valen charged again. But Carol didn't meet her with force. She redirected the strike, stepped aside. Used her sister's weight against her. She didn't. Fight to kill, she fought to protect. Move after move. She broke the rhythm. Valen grew tired. Her swings slower. Her breathing heavy. Finally, Carol disarmed her. Throwing the golden blade to the ground, she pressed her own blade to Valen's throat but didn't move. She lowered her weapon. "I will not be like you," she said. "I will not spill blood to prove I am strong. Strength is not death." Valen looked up, confused, broken. The hunters behind her slowly lowered their weapons. One by one, they dropped their blades. The forest was quiet again. Eli groaned from the ground. And Carol ran back to him. She pressed a healing patch to his wound, whispering, "You are more foolish than brave." He smiled weakly. "Thanks for noticing." Valen walked over, slowly. Her eyes no longer full of fire, she knelt beside them, touching her sister's shoulder. "You are different now," she said softly, "and I don't understand." Carol looked at her, then stay and learn. And in that moment, something changed, not just between two sisters, but in a warrior tribe that had never known mercy. Eli's wound healed slowly, not because it was deep but because Carol wouldn't leave his side. She watched over him night and day, pressing healing patches, changing bandages, and even making him drink warm herbal mixtures she learned from a trader's book. They tasted like burnt grass. But Eli drank them anyway, because her eyes held worry, and her hands trembled when she thought he might still be in pain. He smiled through the discomfort. "I'm not dying," he whispered once. Carol narrowed her eyes. You bleed every day," he said. "I've seen the scars." She didn't answer, only looked away, quiet, thoughtful, holding something deep inside. Outside the outpost, the world had changed. The Red Hunt had not returned to kill. Instead, they had stayed close, by silent. Watching, unsure, Valen didn't speak much, but she didn't leave either. Something in her had been shaken. For the first time, warriors were questioning their code, and Carol, once called weak, was becoming something new, something stronger than any blade. A week passed, and Carol began training again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Two of the Red Hunts joined her in the clearing. Awkward at first, unsure how to move without killing, Eli watched from the window. A blanket over his chest, smiling softly. She was teaching them what he taught her: patience, timing, restraint, balance, mercy. And it was working. One evening, as the orange sun painted the sky, Carol returned inside, holding a small crystal jar. Inside was a glowing flame symbol from her people, called the Oath Light. She placed it beside Eli's bed. "It is our tradition," she said, "to give this only to those who saved a warrior soul. Eli blinked. That's a lot of pressure. Cariel sat beside him, her face serious. You changed me, she whispered. You didn't just protect my body. You protected my choice. He reached out and gently took her hand. It was small, rough, scarred, but warm. Cariel, he said, you saved yourself. I just reminded you who you already were. Her grip tightened, just for a moment. Then she looked down, her voice quieter than before. I want to stay, she said, not just to teach. Not just to fight. Eli's heart skipped a beat. Stay where? She looked up, eyes bright with a light he hadn't seen before. Here, with you. If you'll have me. He was quiet for a long time, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he didn't expect her to say those words, you already belong here, he said at last. This place is yours now too. In the days that followed, others began to arrive. Not hunters, but outcasts, broken warriors, curious minds from distant tribes. Word had spread that a tiny huntress had faced death, spared her enemies, and still survived. And more than that, she had found peace among humans, and peace was a rare treasure in the galaxy. Eli built new shelters using old cargo crates and scrap. Cariel helped design them low and round with warm stones buried under the floor. Each night, the campfires burned softly, and laughter filled the air. Children played near the trees, their voices high and full of joy. Alien children, human children, both learning from one another, both calling this place home. One night, Cariel sat beside Eli under the stars. She wore no armor now, just a simple wrap, light and easy. Her blade rested near her feet, untouched. I don't need it anymore, she said, looking at the stars. Eli raised an eyebrow. What if trouble comes? Cariel smiled gently. Then we face it together. He watched her as the firelight danced across her face. She was still small, still quiet, still deadly in her own way. But something inside her had softened. Not weak, never weak. Just calm, steady, full of life. She turned to him, eyes soft, voice barely a whisper. You gave me strength. Eli, not the kind I asked for, she said, but the kind I needed. And now, she added, placing her hand on his, I give. You mine? He didn't speak, just nodded, because sometimes words weren't needed. Sometimes the quiet was enough. Sometimes a promise was stronger than fire. And so they sat, human and huntress, at the edge of the forest, in a place built from old machines and new dreams, where strength was no longer measured in blood, but in the choice to protect, to forgive, to begin again. And in the darkness beyond the stars, the galaxy watched and remembered the tiny warrior who begged for human strength and found her own. The camp had grown. What was once a lonely outpost surrounded by forest had become a peaceful village. Tents and shelters built from old ship parts and fallen wood stood in neat rows. Children laughed. Smoke from cooking fires rose into the air. And at the center of it all stood Cariel, no longer a hunter, no longer hunted. Now she was a leader, a teacher, and a symbol of change. Eli watched her from the steps of the main shelter, smiling quietly. He had never planned to become part of something so big, but somehow, just by helping one lost girl, he had helped build a future, and Cariel. She had become more than he ever imagined. She no longer wore her cracked armor. She now wore a short coat stitched with both alien symbols and human fabric on her chest. She wore a small metal tag Eli had made for her, the first piece of Earth technology she had ever held. It had one word carved in it, peace. One evening, as the sky turned deep purple, a large ship entered orbit above the forest. The village looked up, nervous. It was not a warship, but it was not small either. A message buzzed on the old comms unit Eli had repaired weeks ago. This is Ambassador Rilan of the Interspecies Alliance, the voice said. We come in peace. seeking the one they call Kiriel. Kiriel stood tall, her voice steady. Let them come. A day later, a team of humans, aliens, and diplomats arrived. They looked shocked when they saw the village, dozens of warriors from one sphere. Tribes were building houses together, children from enemy races playing chase with wooden sticks, and in the center, the tiny alien girl they had read about, Kiriel, the huntress. The one who chose mercy, the ambassador, sat across from Kiriel. And Eli in the main tent, you understand? Your actions have changed many things. She said, your people were seen as brutal. Now they are sending messages of peace. Carol nodded. Because they saw something stronger than fear. They saw humans. Eli chuckled. We're not exactly famous for peace. Carol looked at him. But you showed me that? Strength does not mean killing. You gave me the space to make my own choice. The ambassador asked, what do you want now? What future do you choose? Kiriel didn't even hesitate. I want to stay, she said. This is my tribe now, not of blood, but of belief, outside the tent. The village gathered, curious and hopeful. The ambassador stood and raised her voice. This place will be recognized as a peace zone, she declared. No armies shall pass. No weapons shall rise without cause. Cheers erupted from the crowd, not loud and wild, but strong, full of pride. Because they knew they were no longer forgotten or hunted. They were home. That night, a fire was lit in the center of the camp. Eli stood beside Kiriel, as stories were told, some old. Some new children sat wide-eyed as she told of her first battle. How she had chosen not to kill. How she had begged a human for strength and found something better. Eli laughed when she spoke about his terrible soup, and she even acted out the way he fell during training. He playfully rolled his eyes, but deep inside he felt proud. She had come so far, and so had he. As the stars rose above, Kiriel pulled him aside. I have something to say, she whispered. He followed her to the edge of the clearing, where the forest met the firelight. She reached into her coat and pulled out the small oath flame he had once seen. Now it was brighter, steadier. I gave this to you once, she said, to thank you for saving me. But I didn't understand what I truly meant until now. Eli looked at her, quiet, waiting. You gave me a life, she said. Not just survival, you showed me a way to live with purpose, not just fear. I want to walk this path with you. Whatever comes, Eli took the flame from her hand gently. His voice was soft. You're not alone anymore. We walk it together. She leaned her head against his shoulder for a moment. Not as a warrior, but as someone who had finally found peace. And so, the tiny alien huntress who had once begged for human strength, now stood beside a human man, not as a beggar or fighter, but as a bridge between worlds, a leader, a guide, a friend, and perhaps something more, in the forest. Camp where metal met earth and stars watched from above, a new story began, not of war, but of hope.